You know what's one of the most important things that science can't explain yet? Well, it's you, or rather, your consciousness, yourself. Because it's such a fundamental mystery, some people call it a miracle. Now, the Buddhists have something to say about that, and turns out that their interpretation of it is actually incredibly accurate. Yes, they do talk about celestial maidens and mountains which connect the gods with humans. Besides these points, they do have a lot to say, which is valuable. I have to say that the ideas which I learned about were probably amongst the best that I ever learned. I'd put it even in the top 3. It's true, I did learn only 3 things in my life, but it's still an achievement, nevertheless. So, to understand the Buddhist concept of consciousness, we first have to understand focus. And that is actually very simple. Imagine an orange right now. Now, you can probably do it with great ease, but it turns out that the skill is absolutely amazing. You could very well call it a superpower, because focus, as established by Buddhists and common sense as well, is how your mind focuses consciousness. So for example, if you look at a piece of paper, you really tune out all the other elements. You're not thinking about your left toe. So what we'll do now is use this superpower to change how we perceive things. Let's start right off the bat with a big problem with focus. The problem is that it sometimes wanders to places we simply don't want it to go. For example, the mind of an anxious person, or an angry one, is probably not thinking of the joys of their life or their amazing opportunities and circumstances. It's probably thinking about what they don't have, what they should be having, and so on and so forth. So what if we, instead of dwelling upon these thoughts, found ways to notice them and then ignore them? So is it possible? Yes, it's possible, and it's actually very simple. The key is to separate what you consider the self, the person perceiving the thoughts you have, and the thoughts you have. So rather than being the same thing, you put them in 2 different categories. It's you perceiving, and then there's the thoughts. But that's not really saying anything, so let me give you a tool which renowned scientists use every day to help patients. Imagine that your thoughts and emotions are floating on a river, just as logs would on a river. As you do so, rather than engaging with them, you can just observe it. Just think about how it's passing by, and you can ignore it, in fact, as it goes off into the horizon. The point here is to realize that your emotions and thoughts constantly flow through your brain. You can choose to engage with them, but most of your thoughts are stupid and harmful, so you don't have to. Instead, you can just let them pass by and enjoy a new level of emotional self-control. With this immensely powerful tool, we're ready to get to the heart of this video. And the truth is, you don't only have to control your emotions and thoughts with this tool. You can also control everything else, every other sense that you experience. Touch, smell, sight, and so on. So let me explain to you how we can approach this perspective, this Buddhist perspective, such that you can also gain these benefits. Imagine that everything you're seeing right now is seen as though through a monitor or a VR headset. Rather than perceiving everything as you would normally, try to focus on everything you see, on your ability to see the shadows and the colors and the depth of different items. As it turns out, when you focus on things like that, you become more grounded in the present. You focus less on what will happen, what is stressful usually, and instead you focus on what is happening now. To me, what's amazing about this ability, this perspective, is that rather than seeing the world as a boring way to arrive at your goals, you see it as something completely novel and immensely valuable and interesting, because everything has different qualities to it. Even the chair, which I'm looking at right now, is beautiful in some sense. It has different shadows going over it, and it's completely unique to everything else I've ever seen. When you go outside, you could look at the sun and see how it shimmers through the leaves, or warms your skin. When you hear the wind, you can imagine how loud it is, or how quiet, or how interesting the sound is. Right now, what you could do is sense your breathing. Consider how your intake of breath is natural and repeating and cycling and interesting in just that. The Buddhists consider that once you live your life fully in the present, you have achieved a sort of enlightenment. And I think that's not far off in my experience, because the more I look at the world as something interesting in and of itself, rather than me having to make it interesting through my actions, through my continual stress and work, I immediately feel a relaxation and a admiration for what is happening right now that I never experienced before. And it's absolutely extraordinary. And ultimately, that is the essence of Buddhism and the Buddhist perspective which I wanted to share. Because rather than constantly judging and planning and perceiving things as means to an end, you view them as something beautiful in and of themselves. So to encapsulate everything I told you, let me share one of my favorite lyrics. It's by Pink Floyd, and it goes like this: "All you touch and all you see is all your life will ever be." You shouldn't view life as something to achieve, something to conquer and do in the future, but something that is happening already. And so, I hope that the tools I gave you allow you to experience a bit more of the beauty around you right now, and perhaps with it, your life will become a little bit more beautiful as well.